Welcome to Sabbath School Daily, where we have been studying from this lesson, Psalms. This week we're starting a brand new lesson, which is lesson number 10, and it has the title, Lessons from the Past. Our memory verse comes from Psalm 78, verse 3 and 4, and it says, "Which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us, we will not hide them from our children, telling to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wonderful works that he has done." In the study of history, there's this one thing called the theory of Hegel. And basically what the theory of Hegel says is that history is cyclical. Things come and things go, and they repeat themselves. And so basically the idea is that there's this one train of thought, this one concept called the thesis. And so you have the thesis, it's the main status quo. And then after the thesis comes the antithesis, and that basically goes up against the thesis. It battles it, it goes up against it, it rebels against it. You have reformation, you have different ideas coming up, you have a pushback from the status quo. And from that battle between the thesis and the antithesis, the combining and conjoining of the ideas, you have something new, which is the synthesis. It's the combining of what used to be and what is the new status quo. So that's the new synthesis, and over time the synthesis becomes then the new thesis, and so on and so forth. And in history, what you have is this cycle of the thesis, the antithesis, the synthesis, and then the new thesis. Now, I'm not saying that that applies to everything. There are absolutely new eras of time where new things happen, where you don't really have this cyclical understanding or view of history. But for the most part, I feel that it is a theory that holds ground. The Bible itself tells us that there is no new thing under the sun, and that what has been, what has happened, will happen again. And so this idea of history being cyclical and us learning from history is very important. That's what we're going to be studying about in this week's lesson. The understanding that everything that has happened, everything that has been, it can apply to our life. If we learn from the lessons of the past, if we learn from our ancestors, if we learn from God's people in the past, in the Bible especially, then that will be well for us, or we will be able to learn from that, and we will be able to go on and have a more productive life, not falling into the pitfalls, hopefully, that those people fell into. And so in the book of Psalms, you'll see that there are several different Psalms that are described as historical Psalms. They talk about events in the past, things that have already happened, and how we can learn from them, and what we should and should not do in our relationship and in our encounter with Jesus Christ. Look at what the lesson opens up by saying. In numerous psalms, praise takes the form of narrating the Lord's mighty acts of salvation. These psalms are often called salvation history psalms or historical psalms. Some appeal to God's people, telling them to learn from their history, particularly from their mistakes and the mistakes of their ancestors. Certain historical psalms contain a predominant hymnal note that highlights God's past wonderful deeds on behalf of God's people, and that strengthen their trust in the Lord, who is able and faithful to deliver them from their present hardships. So these historical psalms, they serve as lessons, as object lessons in how we can learn to deal with the things that come in life and learn how to relate to the Lord, as I've already previously said. The lesson then goes on to say that the special appeal of the historical psalms is that they help us to see our lives as part of the history of God's people and to claim that past as our own, as we have been adopted into the family of the historic people of God through Christ. The historical heritage of the ancient people of Israel is indeed the account of our spiritual ancestry. Therefore, we can and should learn from their past, which is ours as well. Friends, the Bible, much more than just the story of these people, and mind you, I believe that these were literal people, literal accounts of historical moments, but at the same time, I also understand that this is our biography. The way that they meet God, the way that they relate to God, their actions and reactions and how God deals with them, that's our biography as well. It's our story and how we should live, in the ways that we deal with God and how he deals with us, in the moments that we fall, in the moments that we make mistakes. The way that the Lord dealt with these people is the way that he will deal with us. After all, God does not change. And so as we study the lesson this week, I would encourage you to really dig into the Psalms that are being brought up every day so that you can find object lessons that you can apply in your own life, in the way that you encounter the Lord, in the way that you deal with him and are dealt with by him. So remember that. Study your lesson. It's going to be a wonderful source of learning, a wonderful source of growth for you in your Christian journey. The lesson then concludes by saying the final goal is to realize that each generation of God's people plays a small but significant part in the grand historical unfolding of God's sovereign purposes in the great controversy. All of us have a part to play, be that big or small. In God's plan for the salvation of humanity, you have a part to play. There are people that only you can minister to, people that will be touched by your story, by your influence, by your love and your care for them. And so allow the Lord to use you that way. Allow the Lord to reveal to you what mistakes and what pitfalls to deviate from, to turn away from, and what path to walk on every day of your life. Please again, remember to study your lesson, look up the Bible text, fill out the questions. Also, please comment down below. I love hearing from you. And also remember to like, to share, and to subscribe to our videos. We release one every day. And I hope to see you again here tomorrow for another Sabbath School Daily.